Well, hello, that's me again. Today is May 7th, 2025, and I will start with what was totally anticipated, and considering the nature of the Kiev regime, and its curators, they are still from United States, but the larger role, of course, is played by London. And you saw yourself actually in my last video what the victory parade in London looked like, and how the people from Azov battalion were marching on the horse dung. So yeah, it's pretty much pretty much describes the realities on the ground. But if you take a look today at the statistics, the tally, so to speak, here we are. This is the preparation on the 80th anniversary of the Red Army while in Soviet Union defeating Nazi Germany. Granted, with some help with the lies and the heroic role nobody denies, but the burden was of course carried by the Soviet Union. And as you can see yourself, 524 drones are being launched, have been launched at Russia. Overwhelming majority of them have been shut down. And not only drones, there are missiles, all kinds of things which fly, and especially towards Moscow. Just this very moment, as we speak, there have been 6 other drones which have been shut down, which were flying towards Moscow. These these war criminals from London, there are no other types there anymore at the levels of power. And of course, the Nazi Kiev regime, they try everything to, well, basically disrupt which is turning now into the gigantic celebration. As you can see yourself, here is Mr. Xi Jinping's aircraft arriving to Moscow. Mr. Vucic arrived. All kinds of people. 29 people, the heads of state, have arrived to Moscow. And of course, yeah, they will be trying to do. I mean, London and its SOBs will be trying to do everything as to spoil the celebration. And I want to underscore the very important thing that yes, if something happens, if they try to do this on the May 9th, which will be the gigantic parade on the Red Square, and it's going to be broadcast all over the world, there are all kinds of means which, as Mr. Medvedev stated, that will ensure that the main tanks will not come to Kiev. Especially it's the central part, and especially the parts of its metro, which will be penetrated by the intermediate hypersonic weapons of the type of Oreshnik, which will penetrate deep underground and will be done with the Ukrainian so-called political elite and the curators from primarily, well, there are some CIA, of course, still hanging out there, but it's primarily British. So if they want to experience this, let them experience this. And now this clown Starmer, as you can see yourself, the Telegraph, pardon me. They talk about the Starmer prepares for attack by Russia. Officials asked to update 20 years old contingency plans that would put UK on war footing after Kremlin threats. I don't know what kind of threats he is talking about, but if his government wants to steal money for all kinds of this contingency planning and trying to figure out how to prevent themselves to be killed from being killed, if God forbids they really think that they can stave off or survive the attack by Russia, I don't know. I mean, as many times have been stated before, here those are not normal political leaders. They are not statesmen. They are primarily political nincompoops without any serious education, and the only thing they know is how to be elected and stay elected and be as people by means of PR, legerdemain, all kinds of the rhetoric. That's the only thing they know how to do. It's verbiage, basically, just blah, 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 blah. So that's what they do. This is what is this all about. But if you think, as many people accused me before, for? Oh, you have this thing, for United Kingdom. Well, I have the thing for France too, I have the thing for Spain. I have the thing for Europe, for that matter. And it's not like I'm enjoying this talking about when I know average Europeans suffer from this or begin to suffer. And it's not like I have it for Germany. I understand. I'm a human being, and I understand the tragedy of especially older people and children when they go hungry, when they are cold, or when they are overly hot and die from heat exhaustion. So it's not like this at all. But political elite of the West, as I stated many times, I will repeat it again and will continue to repeat it over and over again, is degenerate. So, and that to a large degree actually, pertinent, so to speak, or related for the, military elite too. And I want to talk today about some really critical things about this whole situation with the Western militaries and why it's absolutely just stunning to recognize the depths of the rut and the way they try to deal with this, but they will not succeed. I want to remind you, I love this. Remember this guy, Ben Hodges? Oh, here are the two. One, the Michael McFaul, he is a, certified moron, but he is, for some reason, passes for the Russian scholar in the United States. And here's Mr. Ben Hodges, General. War is a test of wheels and logistics. I assess Russian forces will collapse by end of summer, and while Ukrainian armed forces will go over to defense, exploiting that collapse and drive back RF forces to 23rd February line or more by September. That was stated by the May of, I don't know, it's just 2022. You look at this, and this is the guy, guys. This is the epitome of the American general. If you listen to my Colonel Larry Wilkerson, me and Nima at Nima's show yesterday, Colonel Wilkerson, who was the chief of staff of Colin Powell, also states the thing which I repeat ad nauseam, that once you become a general in the U.S. Army, you lose completely whatever the professional qualities you had before. And I agreed with him that essentially these are all those colonels and lieutenant colonels. These are high level, but still medium to high level, medium rare level, if you wish, of the American military, which are dealing with the actual facts. But even when you have the actual facts, they still, it seems to be not able to properly translate it to the higher ups and convince them that, guys, what you know about war and warfare in general is absolutely useless. And this is critical because what we have now, and people talk about that Trump somehow stated that Houthis have surrendered. Well, the Houthis agreed not to strike American ships. The rest of it is no, there's no capitulation as Trump tries to present it to anybody. But we already have the news today, yesterday actually, that second US Navy jet is lost at sea from Truman aircraft carrier. They go into the elaboration about that. Yeah, it's a $60 million aircraft. Looks like it was the tail hook which gave up, and so they obviously couldn't stop, brakes wouldn't work under these speeds, the aircraft carrier, so they rolled over the board, and both pilots are successfully ejected, slightly wounded, but they should be fine. And so this is the second aircraft, but it tells you actually very much about the situation, that all those operations, they're not simple. And Mr. Trump today stated that he will rename, I don't know, let him try, rename the Persian Gulf into Arabian Gulf. But the point is, when you look attentively of all those hustle and PR around those events, you will see yourself that actually the equipment, yes, it actually is susceptible to the tear and wear. And considering the operational tempo of the aircraft carrier in this particular case, Truman, bombing runs, constantly take off and landing, and you know that the aircraft carrier, obviously landing, well, both takeoff, but landing especially, it's essentially controlled crash. Your aircraft experiences horrendous G-forces, and at some point of time, yeah, after so many landings and takeoffs, yeah, some things begin to break. And this is the second aircraft which Truman lost in the last week. So it's, yeah, it tells you that yeah, those operations are not easy. Let's put it this way. And of course they have been bombing Sana with civilian targets primarily, and now it is Israel which is left with the dirty deed to basically bomb whatever they want to bomb them. So we'll see how it goes. But let's start with, after this Truman thing, we have this situation which is was discussed essentially by Larry Wilkerson, Nima, and me yesterday, that yeah, those generals, those American generals, I mean, good Lord, I mean, look at Ben Hodges, look at Kit Kellogg, look at this Keon, look at Petraeus. It seems like these guys never went and never served a day in the military. They repeat all kinds of the BS media points. They do not understand operations, which I can tell you they do not. And so we have this Mr. Hexet, the Secretary of Defense, and he has to slash 20% of 4-star billets in dramatic cuts to active duty ranks. So, and yeah, 4-star billets, I mean, it's bureaucracy, okay? And it's political bureaucracy. They stop being military at this some point of time once they cross into this general or admiral type territory. And the Pentagon will officially shed the number of general officers' billets after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth signed a memo today outlining a plan. And he is talking about that. I don't think it's going to help, but at least it's some saving money procedure. And the Department of Defense is committed to ensuring the lethality of the U.S. military forces to deter threats and, you know, typical, you know, gobbledygook, you know, about this, you know, blah, 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 blah. So that's basically what it is. But to that end, he ordered the department leaders to remove redundant force structure. What is the redundant force structure? Well, it's duplicates which you create those billets. Make no mistake, I want to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about. It's not only in the US military, it's all across the board. And any military in the world, and even the Soviet military at some point of time, and especially through the political organs, they were creating a lot of redundant billets, basically, and to create a lot of the general and admiral positions, which of course paid handsomely. There was a lot of privileges. The same goes to the United States, but in the United States it's just took a grotesque forms. And as Hexeth says, the goal here is to remove at least 20% of the 4-star jobs inside the active component and another 20% of general officers inside the National Guard. There are approximately 800 general officers and about 44 stars currently, according to the government data and Hexet. So it is definitely a very large organization. We know that Pentagon is pretty much corrupted in very many respects, from financial to all kinds of other administrative forms. And so the move comes amid other major changes for the American military. Breaking Defense first reported that the Army was planning to revamp and consolidate its acquisition workforce to include cutting the number of general officers in leadership posts. Then later in the week, Hexet released a massive army overhaul memo that directed the services to reduce general officer positions to streamline command structures for the war fighter. As I stated already, I do not necessarily, if I would have been from the objective point of view, I do not necessarily doubt that it was needed. But of course, much more is needed than just merely cutting all those billets in the U.S. Army or U.S. Armed Forces. What is required, a much more serious issue of the doctrine rethinking. and that requires political level decisions. But as you all know, the political level decisions in the United States, you cannot do anything about it because they are all limited by the corruption of the Capitol Hill, the 4-year or 6-year election cycle, and basically what you have a mess. You have hustle, and the country is being driven into the ground for the last actually 20 plus years. So, well, what can I say? Well, the driving into the ground started actually earlier than that, but today we are beginning to experience all those wonderful or beautiful, as Mr. Trump loves to say, things like the rising prices, inflation, and eventually we will have to deal with the thing which cannot be dealt with, which is the gigantic national debt, which cannot be repaid. So, but while at it, we need to keep in mind that things are happening in other, so to speak, field, if you wish. And so look what we have. It is actually very well juxtapositioned and juxtaposed, if you wish. If you take a look at all this obviously failure of Trump administration to try to squeeze Russia for anything. Unheard writes, for example, yesterday that after months without announcement of new military aid to Ukraine, reports emerged over the weekend that an additional US-made Patriot air defense systems will be sent from Israel to the struggling country this summer, coming on the heels of President Donald Trump's public frustration with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. The move is likely intended as a signal of Washington resolve and willingness to extend military support to Kyiv if Moscow refuses to accept U.S. terms. Moscow already refused to accept U.S. terms. Mr. Witkoff came back to Washington essentially bearing the same message which was articulated primarily, most of it was articulated in December 2021. And so, Unheard writes that the strategy won't work. Not only will sending the additional air defense to Ukraine do little to pressure Putin, but it will not help Ukraine much in the short or to long term. Worse, the decision deepens U.S. engagement and wastes more resources on a war that is a peripheral to core U.S. interest. Actually, it's not necessarily peripheral. I will have to challenge this assertion because United States have been humiliated militarily and its technical ability have been completely destroyed. They literally have nothing to send more. That is why they are sending the Patriot from Israel, which will need it most likely because Houthis will continue to deal with Israel. So, and I want to go back and show you again the statistics. I showed it in the beginning. Here it is. Look at this. This is the today's tally. As you can see yourself, we see again ticking up of the losses on the Ukrainian side and 524 drones. So that's how it will continue, but it doesn't matter because essentially we are looking at, again, mobilization of potential, so to speak, or lack thereof of Ukraine, and eventually they will be physically annihilated, most of them anyway. So this is how Russia fights, and this is one of the most critical points which I have to admit. I mean, Mr. Vershinin, you probably remember him in 2022 at RUSI. Royal United States Institute. His article was, "Oh my God, the return of industrial warfare." I was very sarcastic at that time because, as you might remember this in my blog from 2014. The only thing I'm writing about there for the last, well, the second decade now is that it never went away. It was always the core of any kind of the serious warfare. This is all about, industrial warfare always was, or is, and will remain. So, and I've been at that time obviously very sarcastic about it. Now, Mr. Vershinin produces, make no mistake, I understand where he's coming from, I understand his background, and that he was an armor officer without ever experiencing real armor operation against real armor, like in Iraq or late Iraq or Afghanistan. But this is one of the most schizophrenic types of the writing. This is in the responsible statecraft, oh my gosh, almost aircraft, So it's called Quincy Institute. So, and he talks is, well, at least he admits, that's why I'm saying it is a very schizophrenic in the sense that he admits facts, but he obviously makes a very wrong conclusions on the on what justifies those facts, which is really fascinating. But guess what? The Ukraine battlefield position is deteriorating fast. Should Kiev collapse, the Russian army will surge forward, pushing the line of contact deeper into Ukraine, and peace terms will get worse. Mr. Vershinin, again, didn't read what Vladimir Putin, Mr. Medvedev, Mr. Lavrov, and all people in the top of Russian politics say that it's all about the basically destruction of the regime, Kiev regime, and Colonel McGregor actually says that Russians may go and take Kiev. But the point is, Kiev will collapse. It is in the process of collapse. It's just what we are observing. I know it sounds horrible. We are observing physical annihilation of the remnants of the mobilizational potential of Ukraine. Simple as that. So the question is not should Kiev collapse. It's just a matter of how Russians will get their, well, basically terms of which they spoke non-stop for more than 3 years. There is nothing to talk about, but yet, you know, for some reason he thinks that Russians will surge forward. Well, this is called offensive operations, and that is exactly what it is. You exhaust, you basically destroy your enemy, and then you go on offensive. There you go. Simple as that. So, and he talks about that election of US President Donald Trump changes US policy towards Ukraine from as long as it takes to seeking a negotiated peace settlement. No, it doesn't, and it never did. Actually, Trump from the get-go was fake on that. Russians knew it, and this so-called negotiated peace settlement is nothing more than the ceasefire as long as it takes to actually revamp whatever was left from the Ukrainian state and Ukrainian armed forces, and prepare them for the second go at Russia, to harass Russia non-stop, because this is all between United States and Russian Federation, and it's between the West and Russia. And they want Washington and Europe, they want Russia defeated, destroyed, broken up in few pieces, and that's it. If they think that this is their paranoia, well, I have a bridge to sell them. So, and basically, he talks about belligerents may conduct offensive operations while negotiations are progressing. Let me tell you, let's be very clear, and this is expected from the senior American officer who have to understand the difference between attack in the tactical formation and what offensive operations are. These are two different things. Does armed forces of Ukraine attack? Yes. As we speak right now, they try to attack again to grab something like, 1/3 of the kilometer of Russian territory, let's say at Belgorod, and in order for the PR effect, this is the only thing which, for example, American generals know. They know how to fight for PR. They do not understand actually operations which are complex. So when he talks about offensive operations, Ukraine is incapable now of conducting strategic offensive operations, and the only thing which it can do, it can attack, and they do attack. They attack, they get annihilated, they pump with the drugs all those people which they steal from the streets, or as the volunteers, if you wish, and they attack again, and they get killed again, and their military hardware is destroyed. So when he talks about belligerents, he should be very specific about what he's talking about, because audience who reads this, Responsible Statecraft, read the American Conservatives or Wall Street Journal, most of them, they have no clue about warfare. But I mean, you see, you have to know those nuances, so to speak. So Vershinin continues. I mean, you can read his the whole thing there, and he doesn't operate with the proper numbers actually, but it's fine. It is forgivable. But Look what he says. Western powers have staked the liberal world order on the outcome of this war. Negotiated peace on Russian terms today would be bad, but betting on an unlikely improvement in battlefield conditions and losing would be far worse. Yeah, that's true, but point is, how does this correspond with the issue that belligerents will conduct the offensive operations? When the only one belligerent, Russia, can conduct offensive operations, not attacks, not some company going on the, as they call the offensive, yeah, well, in reality, attacking and being killed. No, we're talking about offensive operations as they were coordinated by the whole concept, combination of the battles, which pursues operational, even strategic aims. But what can I say? So anyway, the U.S. appears to be taking the former path that with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth signaling to the Russians that U.S. is serious about negotiation by taking Ukraine NATO membership off the table. This is just one of their root causes. Much more is entailed in all those negotiations. It's not just NATO, obviously. There will be no Ukrainian NATO membership because otherwise the Ukraine will cease to exist as a whole. The EU, however, chose the latter path by promising support as long as it takes and to negotiate from a position of strength. That is comical. Not realizing the strength is measured in combat and industrial power, not bold statements. That's a good statement. That's finally a professional military statement. The current trends on the battlefield are more supportive of US position. No, they are not. Russians and many people, including people who communicated with Mr. Lavrov and those people who are actually on the Russian side, they say that, well, we know what US is pursuing. It's essentially the same European position, it's just that it's more sneaky and more, how to put it, I mean, it's a ruse. Russians know it's a ruse. And I spoke about this last time, that it is Trump's war now, and it will stay now as Trump's war. And so he talks that it gives the US a chance to contain the fallout from the Ukraine war to Europe and to preserve its global leadership. I don't know what global leadership Mr. Vershinin is talking about, but I wrote 4 books on that matter, and I don't think we will come together with him on this issue because, well, even if he talks about the dominant role of the US dollar, he says the dominant role of the US dollar is built, the main pillar of it was the mythology of the US military power, which have been completely destroyed, and destroyed in the most humiliating manner. And the faster all those people who try to, shape or describe the policies or what passes for the policies of the United States understand that, the better it will be. But as I already stated last time, it is clear now that it is Trump's war, and no matter how anybody else dances around it, Russians knew it was a ruse. So if Mr. Trump wants to achieve something, he could have done it. He didn't. And by the way, still negotiations about return of Russian diplomatic property, no direct flights. These are things which could be solved within 2 to 3 hours, not months. So, but that's pretty much tells you everything you need to know. And now, well, there will be nobody from the United States on the May 9th parade on the Red Square. I'm talking about officials. There will be many American veterans, and we know one of our good friend, Ray McGovern, will be there. So it's we're talking about officials, and this is really sad. And while speaking about it, while talking about those cuts in terms of the billets in Pentagon, here are the news which, keep in mind, these are shocking news. And this basically explains to you why whenever I hear about global leadership, I laugh. Not anymore with, sarcastically smiling. I laugh outright, laughing out loud, And here it is. These are the latest news. And let me put it this way. I'm very specific on this. United States certainly needs to update its nuclear deterrent. There's nothing wrong with having nuclear deterrent. But look what we have now. Boy, it's just unbelievable. It was yesterday. or is it 5th? No, day before yesterday. The Air Force now believes its new nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles will predominantly require digging fresh missile silos. A significant change, it's not significant, it's dramatic change of plans to reuse existing silos, and a move the service has previously assessed will come with major costs. To house the new Sentinel intercontinental ballistic missile, officials previously planned to refurbish 450 existing silos currently used by the Sentinel's predecessor, the aging Minuteman III. But as the Pentagon works through a cost bridge analysis for Sentinel after its price tag ballooned last year, yes, I spoke about it, officials now expect existing silos will largely not be reusable after all. It is a catastrophe, and look what we have in terms of Sentinel. And this is the substitution of the intercontinental ballistic missile, which will fail. We know now it will fail, and that will spur the necessity even more to accelerate the development of the Columbia-class strategic missile submarine. And so they said that when the Pentagon certified Sentinel to continue last year amid a cost breach known as the non-McCurdy, officials explained that they would adopt changes to launch facilities, which would make them more cost-effective as well as less complex. Yes, if you remember this, because the cost overruns for the Sentinel were horrendous. And here we are. The Sentinel program aims to produce 634 missiles, along with an additional 25 for development and testing, and deploy 400 of them in silos spread across the vast missile fields in Great Plains, stretching from Colorado to North Dakota near the Canadian border. A need to big new silos means hundreds may have to be built. And so they explained that using of Minuteman silos cannot be feasible. And that, as the result, look at the numbers. Sentinel has 4 different segments according to Bussier. Command and launch consisting of facilities like silos. Yes, it's not just silos. It's a whole complex. It's almost as complex as the nuclear submarine without the reactor and some other elements. The missile itself, the missile's payload and support equipment. Officials have said the launch facility segment, considering of the large-scale silo construction work and attendant features like modern cabling and new buildings, is the chief source of a roughly 81% budget breach and a new price tag of $141 billion. The program woes have also pushed back initial operational capabilities several years beyond an original 2029 forecast. Upgrading the ICBMs are part of a massive nuclear modernization effort that one government organization say will cost $946 billion over the next decade. $1 trillion, which United States realistically doesn't have. And that brings us to the point of which many people are absolutely fearful to admit, that in the end, and believe me, I have some knowledge of colleagues who are actually officers, former officers of the Russian strategic missile forces. They have PhDs and all kinds of things, they're senior officers. And the talk about the fact that United States will have to completely rely on its naval nuclear deterrent is now, well, in full swing, if you wish. It is a catastrophe in many respects, because they do not even have Sentinel as a missile yet. It doesn't exist. It's primarily plans. And by the time, as was stated very many times before, this may even materialize, granted that they will dig the new silos. Good Lord, I mean, we're looking at the not just loss of the arms race. This is a catastrophe of which many people still are not aware. And they will not be aware because they do not understand what goes into, for example, deployment of the newest nuclear missile as a deterrent, like the Sentinel, which now is, yeah, it's horrendous. And so what can I say? This is the reality. And if somebody pay attention to the 60 million F-18, which is actually working moment, when you operate on such intensity and the operational tempo as Truman, aircraft carrier Truman operates, yeah, you bound to have, aircraft just lost. It's just the reality of the combat. But here, yeah, it's not paraded in the news. It's not, what people are not allowed to focus on that and start asking questions. How the hell we ended up here? Well, I wrote 4 books about it, and read my blog, guys, if you want to know how it all ended up like this. That United States will be reduced to having only 2 out of the triad of the nuclear deterrent, if they will have that anytime soon. So, and this is what I wanted to tell you today, guys. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and 2. And what can I say? Time to get ready for the 80th anniversary, and time for the Russian air defense being even more effective. Have a nice rest of the week. I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.